got credit issues. They have the answer. No matter what your profile is, they're going to help. They work with people who have very bad or just terrible credit, repayment history, as well as people who have no money down. That's right, no money down. They're located at 63 North Federal Boulevard with a great auto inventory. Give them a call at 303-298-1155. That's Magic Financing. Features Margo the Magician. They're open Monday through Friday until 8 and Saturdays till 7. Check them out. That's Magic Financing. Call them today at 303-298-1155. Tell them you heard about it here at KUHSDenver.com. Also visit us at www.magicfinancing.com.
Good afternoon and welcome to The Council. I'm your host, Charlie Pachello. Folks, boy, we have a fantastic show for you today. It is just an honor and a privilege to be able to introduce my guest to you here in just a few moments. But before we do that, I want to let you know that we are broadcasting live here on KUHS TV Radio Denver, The Stream. We're broadcasting here in beautiful Denver, Colorado. It's a beautiful day here, and our streaming, the KUHS, is the number 3 in the nation. We've got some of the best programming in the world, some of the best DJs, some of the best personalities, people that are trying to give you their very best in entertainment, information, education, how to help your health, all kinds of things. We've got some of the most talented TV radio hosts, personalities, professionals, and programming you're going to find anywhere on the internet or even traditional media. Our reach continues to grow beyond our wildest dreams and imaginations, and our audience is growing exponentially as we're being listened to by people from all over the world. Over 40 countries tune into the Council every week, and our mission is to bring quality programming that reflects the diversity of our staff and to have honest, grounded, authentic conversations about the many issues we confront as a society. We strive to bring our city, our nation, and our world together by providing a platform where we celebrate our uniqueness, our commonality, and our humanity. Folks, today we're talking about remembering their sacrifices. And this show is inspired from a book called Ghost Soldiers. It's an epic account of World War II's greatest rescue mission. And it was something that I didn't know about. It was something that in my many years in the military and at the Air Force Academy and other places, I wasn't aware of some of the stories, the personal stories, the individual stories of some of the people who served in our military and experienced some of the most extreme deprivation and pain and suffering as POWs in that conflict. And this book particularly talks about the POWs in the Philippines. After the Bataan Death March, thousands and thousands of American soldiers and Filipino soldiers suffered tremendously. And I didn't understand the depth of their sacrifice and the starvation and the things that they had to go through. And I was weeping tears as I was going through this book. And I just want to share with you a couple parts before we get into it, to have you an idea of some of the things that our men and women have gone through in order to give us our country, our freedoms, our liberties that we so cherish and so often take for granted. There were times during these prisoner war camps where the Japanese had kept a lot of the prisoners in extraordinary deprivation. And at one point, the men had no inkling what the Japanese were going to do to them, and their health was deteriorating fast, and many of their shrapnel wounds had become gangrenous. And the doctors, lacking surgical instruments, were forced to perform amputations by razor blade. And in lieu of anesthetics, 4 or 5 men would pin the screaming patient to the concrete slab as the doctors methodically cut the limb away. And then their situation got worse, and they asked some of the, if some of the prisoners could go to some of the hospitals and receive better care. And instead of transporting some of these men, they transported 16 into a remote spot in the jungle, where they were told to crawl off the truck, and the guards then drew their swords, and steadily working down the line, they decapitated all 15 Americans. They were buried together and were found after the war. And I read these stories. I was appalled and shocked, and so humbled by their sacrifice. And then when the Rangers, it was the Army Rangers, led by Colonel Mucci, who comes in to rescue these men, and Captain Prince, when they found him after 4 years of prison, being prisoners of war, this is what they said, that even though they had prepared themselves for the worst, the Rangers were truly appalled at the grotesque conditions of many of the prisoners. They got a vivid, ghastly parade of amputees, consumptives, men with peg legs, men without hair or teeth, men with the elephantine appendages and scrotums indicative of wet Burberry. One ranger described them as sickly old birds that just had been plucked. The half-naked prisoners were dull-eyed and louse-infested, and they seemed old beyond their years. Most were barefoot or hobbled around on homemade sandals fashioned from strings and slats of cardboard. The Army Rangers shook their heads in disbelief and cried at the sight of these emaciated countrymen so far down the starvation trail. Folks, we got to remember these stories. We have to remember so we don't fall into the same traps again and forget what our people in our past have sacrificed so immensely for our freedoms and our lifestyle, the things that we cherish, and we must remember who they are and what they sacrificed. Today I'm so proud and so honored and so grateful to introduce to you Thayer Green. He is a World War II veteran, 95 years young. And he is a concentration camp liberator in Germany, and he is also a union analyst. Thayer, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Welcome. Welcome to the Council.
Thank you for asking me.
Well, it is an honor, sir. Could you please share your life, just a brief history of your life, where you were born, and how you got into the military?
Okay. I was born in Hartford, Connecticut in March 20th, 1926, which is quite a while ago. I wake up in the morning always surprised that I'm still breathing at my present age, and that life is still an adventure, including this program, I might add. I've got more invitations to share my war experience over the age of 90 than I ever got earlier. So one of the things I can promise your audience is, if you can hold on long enough, you will become famous.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now, my father was minister, congregational minister of the Congregational Church in the town of New Britain, which is not far from Hartford. And I went through the 1930s in a privileged way compared to so many that suffered, their families suffered through the Depression. But my mother quite fortunately inherited a good deal of money, so we ate well. Both of my parents were extremely busy out in the world, and I had the sense that life was secure and dinner would be delicious. And we had a cook and a maid, if you can believe it.
Wow.
So I had people to pick up after me when I was a small kid, and I got a lot of attention and love from a variety of caring people. And so there's no complaint that I can come up with about my origins and my early development, and that makes a big difference. And I'll tell something of my career in a minute, but I'm a practicing analytic psychotherapy, and I'm still at age 95 working with 5 or 6 clients and occasionally supervising some of my younger colleagues. So I haven't stopped working, and I have found that my love of what I do has probably kept me alive, along with a beautiful wife that has been my partner for almost 70 years. So that's roughly my background. I went to public school in New Britain, Connecticut, and then I went to a small private school that gave me an excellent education. Then when I was in ninth grade, I went to Phillips Exeter Academy, which is a prep school in Exeter, New Hampshire, and I got a superb, tough education there, and instead of 27 students in the private school in the country, I was with 650 young men at Exeter, where we had to work really hard on our studies, but I also got to play lots of sports and make some good friends. It was a good exposure to a masculine environment, and for me, really a preparation for what lay beyond 12th grade.
Right. And Thayer, you're part of the greatest generation. I mean, that's what we the greatest generation has this. We have come to understand and recognize that you had this immense strength, this immense character, this immense ability to overcome the odds, overcome the fears that enveloped your world. I mean, you had to face the Great Depression. And then on top of that, you went through World War II. What was it about your generation that made you so strong when you look back on it?
Well, that's a very fair question. It's a hard one for me to answer, because you're talking about a young man who, when he was drafted into the service in 1944, was only 18 years old. So I didn't have very much time to reflect in maturity on the state of the world or the country, or what the hell we were doing over in Japan and Germany. But there was a very different mood in the country back then in our fight against Hitler and the Japanese than exists in this country now. I am appalled, frankly, by how divided, how nasty we can be with each other here, and I have to deal with it, but I don't like it, and I can hardly wait for next Tuesday to express my political passion that I'm sure many other people feel. To live this long and then to listen to some of the nasty, cheap, criminal behavior and attitudes that are going on in this country makes me sick and angry.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I have company in that. But it is a free country, and I fought for it, and I'm glad I did. I love America. I love the United States. And I would have, not gladly, but I would have accepted if my fate was to die in the Second World War, because it was a good war, a necessary war, and the day that our unit encountered a concentration camp in Wiesbaden, Germany, and I saw 150 corpses or so, and human beings breathing their last breaths before they starved to death. I saw a level of horror that has changed my life, for sure. And I wrote my parents that evening and said, because, you know, my father was a congregational minister in the Congregational Church in New England, and I was raised on the Christian message of love and compassion and care. And here I was in an environment of death and starvation and cruelty, and I had to confront it. I had to deal with it, which I did, and in a rather matter-of-fact way. You know, it's always been my philosophy. Wherever I am and whatever I'm doing, it is what it is, and don't pretend it's something it is not. And I wrote home to my parents that night and said, I hate what I'm doing, but I have to be here and do what I'm doing. And my job was to kill Germans, whom I didn't even know. And, you know, one of my experiences of combat from the start, when I first was under fire with German machine guns and rifles and their 88 gun, which was really scary. And I realized these people are trying to kill me and they don't even know me. And this was a new exposure for me. But it's something that all of you who have served and been in combat have experienced. It's so damn impersonal. You're ducking machine gun bullets and shells, but the people pulling the triggers don't even know who you are. And how the hell do we get in such a dilemma? Why can't we get beyond it? It's a struggle I'm still dealing with regularly. And my present vocation, which I've been doing for more than 50 years, is as an analytic psychotherapist. So I work with men and women who are in one or another kind of fear or a struggling and painful condition in their lives. And I got that from my own experience in realizing how screwed up the world is.
And that's why I think there's so much that we can learn, and we need to learn from you and your generation and those that are still living, so that we can remember what unites us. We can remember what brings us together. We can remember the sacrifices that you've made, so that we can have the opportunity to vote the coming next Tuesday who we want to vote for. It's a privilege to be able to vote, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, whatever it is. Take the time and invest a little bit of your heart and soul into the process, because of men like you and my grandfather who fought in World War II, and others who have served to give us that opportunity. My grandfather, he fought in World War II. He was with Patton in North Africa. He died before I got a chance to talk to him about his experiences and what that meant to him. We never got to talk about it. And those memories, those lessons, those experiences of wisdom, they died with him. And I believe it is so vitally important to remember and to honor and to celebrate and to mourn all that your generation sacrificed for us to give us the freedoms we have. And we need to record these stories so we don't fall asleep again to the evil that exists and can arise if we don't remain vigilant. Thayer, you've seen evil with your own eyes. I would be, with great humility, sir, could you please take us down the memories that you experienced from World War II, that you carried with you in your soul?
I've got quite a few rather juicy experiences in my exposure to combat of various kinds, and I'd be glad to share them if this is the time to do it.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Okay. Then I was drafted at the age of 18, and my plan had been to see if I could find a way to get into military government, because I knew we were going to beat the Germans, and I was a very smart student, and I had a lot of educational exposure. So I was hoping that I could somehow, when I was drafted, go into military government. I went to Fort Devens to get enrolled in the Army and to get assigned to a unit. And I waited in line and finally sat down facing a a very bored corporal who was interviewing one of us after another. And so I gave as brief but persuasive a encouragement for him to place me in military government, and he obviously wasn't terribly impressed. And he finally stopped me and said, "You got flat feet, bud?" And I said, "No, I don't have flat feet." And he pulled out a stamp and stamped my application and my placement in the infantry. And so I became an infantry combat soldier by his decision. And I, in my present life and for many years, I've had a kind of mixed reaction to his decision. On the one hand, how dare he not take me seriously? But on the other hand, since I survived, and I wouldn't not want to have had all the experiences I've had, I'm reluctantly grateful to him for putting me in combat infantry. And my war career started when I was shipped to a camp south of Boston in Long Island, which was a departure camp for Europe. And when I sat there for a week or more, and then they put us on an ocean liner, the USS America, which had been transformed into a troop ship. And they could take 7,500 young soldiers wherever they chose. And so I was put on the USS America, which they changed the name to the US West Point. And so I've been to West Point indirectly. And we set out across the Atlantic, and we zigged for 7 minutes, and then we zagged for 7 minutes. That was apparently the safe amount of time you could go in one direction in this beautiful ocean liner before you could become an attractive target to a German submarine. And so we went down south of Bermuda, which it would not seem to be a trip to Europe, but we then headed north to north of Ireland.
Wow.
And during that period, nothing particularly interesting or exciting occurred, but it did give me a chance to talk with my fellow draftees, and we could all talk about our anxiety as to where we were going to be placed. Then, while we were, I was down in the forward hold of this ship with 400 other guys, and it was not the most comfortable bedding, but we were stacked. I can't remember whether we were 3 high or 4 high in this hold in bunks that were about, I don't know, 3 feet apart, 4.5 feet apart, something like that. You crawled up to your bunk and you slid into it. And so that's what I did for several nights as we crossed the Atlantic. And then when we got to Northern Ireland, and of course I didn't know what the hell was going on, all of a sudden there were these major explosions that shook this passenger ship, and at the same time the ship started to tip, and it tipped pretty radically from anything we'd experienced in the previous week or so. Now, I didn't know that the captain and the crew were dodging torpedoes, or in one way or another were trying to get us safely to Scotland. But for us in that hold, which was basically for baggage, we all dashed towards the ladder that would take us up to the first level of actual bunks and passenger stuff. And just about the time the first of us got to the door, they slammed it and shut us in to this forward hold of 400 future soldiers. And how else could we interpret it but that they would sadly let us all drown from the torpedo attack rather than risk that our hold would fill up with water and our ship would sink. So that was my introduction to warfare, was that experience. And it lasted for, I don't know, an hour, 2 hours, something like that. It seemed like it was endless, but finally they opened the door to the next level, and we were right there, and we poured through that door and headed towards fresh air. And when we got up to the promenade deck, I think it was, they let us outside, and we got information that in fact those explosions and that sharp turn had been our passenger ship dodging torpedoes, and that they had successfly dodged the torpedoes, and they had gotten anti-submarine units to arrive over the water and attack the submarines, and so we were protected. And that was really my first major exposure to the Second World War, where somebody was trying to kill me. And I wasn't to take it personally, but I'd be just as dead either way.
Right. What a shock that must have been. I mean, as a young man to cross that, and that's your introduction. How much fear
when
did you
you're
feel?
on a ship with 7,500 fellow future soldiers in this the torpedo warfare was something that I had enough exposure to see I didn't want to die this way.
Right.
And fortunately, I didn't have to. And one of the things that was a comfort to me when we were crossing the Atlantic, I was up on the promenade dock in the dark at night, huddled up against a wall with a lot of other guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this powerful experience sitting there and chatting with the guys right next to me, but I heard a voice, and the voice came from the other side of the deck. And what the voice said was, "There you shall survive."
Mm.
And, you know, I can't explain it. Nobody can explain these experiences. But boy, was it welcome to have a voice from beyond telling me that I was not going to die in that boat, or ship, I should say. And so anyway, we survived the last day north of Ireland, getting into Glasgow, Scotland, accompanied by 2 anti-submarine destroyers who kept us safe. And then I got a long ride along with my fellow replacements on the train from Glasgow, Scotland, down to Southampton in England on the coast of southern England. And the next step was to get on a ferry to go across the English Channel to France. But it was very foggy, and they kept informing us, "We can't take you across the channel in this fog because we will not have a chance to identify where floating mines could blow up the ship." And I thought that was good thinking on their part.
Very good thinking,
so
yes.
We sat in Southampton for 3 or 4 days in the fog, and I remember I competed with my fellow soldiers for, there were no cots or beds or soft floors to sleep on. I managed, I think on the 3rd night, to commandeer a dinner table as a place to sleep. Mm-hmm. And that was quite an accomplishment. And fortunately, I can sleep anywhere. And so on the 3rd or 4th day, the weather cleared. We went across the channel, and this was after, I think it was after Christmas of 44, just before 1945. Anyway, I had not been sleeping in comfort, but I am very grateful to the way I was created, because I can sleep anywhere. And
So when did you get there? When did you get to the front lines? I mean, what was it like right after you got overseas and you got to the front lines with the American troops that were there? What was it like being shelled by the Germans? And how were you guys able to get through those difficult times?
Okay, that's a good question. Thank you for. I tend to get carried away with my storytelling.
That's all right.
We got crammed onto trucks, troop trucks, and we went to a distribution center where eventually we were assigned to a unit, and I was assigned to the 3rd Armored Division of the 1st Army, which was at that moment fighting, oh, my memory isn't good, an early city in Germany. And anyway, by the time we got assigned and got crammed onto troop trucks and headed east toward the fighting, my 3rd Armored Division, which was part of the 1st Army, headed by General Hodges, had captured this western city, and we were headed toward Cologne, Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And my first battle was in attacking Cologne. And as we got near where the front line was, and the front line was still west of the city, first we heard our American howitzers, our 155 howitzers, sending shells 15 miles east onto the Germans. But before very long, we were in the middle of German shelling coming west. And we would look out the back of our truck, and after a while we saw what am I trying to think of? Trucks loading bodies onto them. German bodies, American bodies, and we had a couple of wounded veterans coming back from the hospital, and they'd been there for a month or two, so they'd been in combat, and they were riding in the back of our truck, and they said to the rest of us, adolescents, I'm not the kind that is bright and cheery in that situation, but these guys said, as we looked out the back of the truck and saw all the bodies and the cemetery detail, and they said to us, okay boys, the magic is over, and now it's for real.
Right, it's a whole different story when it's actually there. And you mentioned something that I thought when we talked earlier, when we were talking about your experiences, and you shared with me the other day that as an infantryman, you fought with your ears more than with your eyes. Could you explain what you meant by that?
It's a good time. Yeah, one of the things about fighting, maybe at every level, but certainly in the infantry, is you don't so much need sharp eyes as you need sharp ears, because every time a shell comes your way, you have to decide, is it going to be close? Do I need to jump in a hole? Or is it going to be a couple of 100 yards away and it will explode harmlessly as far as your life is concerned? And that became immediate knowledge and instinct for me to deal with that. So you fight with your ears more than your eyes. Then we got to our outfit, and we had a 1 day of mild exposure to get us accustomed to machine guns and rifles and small arms fire being shot our way, but still being protected. And then we were in it. And the thing that I remember is being with another guy shortly thereafter, 1 or 2 days, no more, where he and I were each behind the wheels of German cars that had been left. And, you know, if you get right behind the wheels, the bullets can't get you. And so we were there, but we couldn't see much. So we both rolled over toward each other, and that apparently made us visible to a German machine gunner, and he pulled the trigger, and German machine guns could fire 1,000 rounds in a minute.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
That's a lot of rounds. And you spoke about, when we talked earlier, or about your hillbilly friend who got his mustache. The hillbilly in your regiment, that funny story about him.
I'll tell that hillbilly story in a minute, but I just want to finish this. The machine gun bullets being fired at us, I would say my fellow soldier and I were lying about 4 feet apart, maybe 3 feet, 4 feet, and the machine gun bullets made a line in the dirt right between us. It couldn't have. It was measured perfectly.
Wow.
Neither of us got hit.
Wow.
But the machine gun bullets came right down between us, and we rolled back over behind the cover of the wheels of the abandoned cars. So that was my first experience of a close call.
Oh, wow.
And it sure as hell was a close call. Then, you know, we were being shelled regularly, and what was important was for your ears to tell you, was this German shell going to hit 50 yards away, or was it going to be 15, 20 yards away, where you had to get under cover and not be hit by the shrapnel. And that was our second lesson. And again, it was our ears, not our eyes. We couldn't see these shells, but we could hear them. And we survived to the extent that the shells were not going to drop on top of us, but we could avoid them. And we did. Then another
Well, we have 10 minutes left for the show there, so I want to kind of get into when you came to the concentration camp, because
Okay.
when you got
right.
to the concentration camp, it was
So,
one of the last living testaments of that horrors of that war. If you could share
Right,
your
okay.
experiences, that would be amazing.
Eventually, after several days of fighting, maybe a week or two even, I'm not clear on time, we captured this major concentration camp, which, as I remember, was outside of Wiesbaden, Germany, and it was a place where, when we went in the gates, you know, we saw at least 150 corpses of prisoners that had starved to death. They didn't have to shoot them, they just worked them to death. And then all the guards in the camp had fled as the American army took over the camp. But it was an enormous operation. There were thousands in this camp, and it was something that's burned in my memory, the sight of it and the incredible suffering. And our impulse was to grab our K rations and feed these starving people, but fortunately the medics arrived about that time and said, "Don't feed the prisoners. If you feed them, you kill them." And so they fed them a nourishing broth for several days before they even thought of serving them solid food. So that was another interesting experience.
Could you share when you walked down the road there and the prisoner, one of the prisoners had escaped and was walking up to you, and what he said or what she said? Please, could you share that?
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you. I obviously need more than an hour.
I do. I wish we could do more. I do.
And one of the first experiences I had before we got to the camp was I looked in front of me, and I don't know whether this was in a German city, I think it was, and I saw this strange figure that wasn't in street clothes, and he wasn't in German army uniform, but he was in some kind of uniform. And I raised my rifle because I didn't know, and I waited there until he was close enough I could see he wasn't armed. And I put my rifle down, and this man staggered up to me, literally, just staggered. But he was one of the ones that had enough strength to stagger and to get out of a camp into this crowd in the city. And he staggered up to me. I was the lead scout for our unit that day, and fell on his knees and kissed my feet and cried out, "Freiheit, Freiheit, Freiheit." Well, I knew German, and I knew what he was crying out was freedom, freedom, freedom. And it still burned in my memory. And, you know, one of the things I fought for was to be a free man in the U.S. And until recently, it didn't take much to believe in it. But we've got this crazy guy who wants to control everything and not allow for freedom, but rather control. And so,
Boy, as an 18, though, thank you for sharing that, Thayer. It's a testament to what's at the, I think is at the core of why veterans and military and warriors and why we do what we do is to give freedom. And when people have had their freedoms taken away, like what you witnessed, and that prisoner of war coming out and falling at your feet, and you know what it really means, and you know all the other stuff is just dribble, and that's what it's about. And that must have had a profound impact and influence on you and the way you would carry yourself the rest of your life.
Yeah, just one more thing I'll say briefly.
Sure.
When you fight in the infantry, or I guess anywhere else but in the infantry, you better have your wits about you.
Yeah.
I survived because of my wits. When I found myself bracketed by artillery, I knew that the next shell was going to land right on top of me. Mm-hmm. So I got the hell out of there. And so many things, your intelligence helps you to survive.
When you got back from being overseas and after 1946, and you came back to the States, how long before you started to process some of the experiences that you had? A lot of times we associate World War II veterans not having experienced any kind of PTSD. You know, that we seem to have this idea they didn't because it was a just war. Did any of your fellow World War II veterans experience those kinds of things?
Well, I think, I can't talk about fellow veterans. I mean, I saw while we were still in the war, 2 or 3 of my fellow soldiers who were overwhelmed with anxiety and fear, and we had to send them back because they couldn't fight. But I did a very good job. When I came back, within 3 weeks, I was a freshman at Amherst College, and I was busy being a student and dating, which was one of the rewards of survival. And I shut out the war to a large degree. I just didn't think about it. I didn't go there. It wasn't until 1977 when I went out to Esalen Institute on the West Coast and had a wonderful therapist in a group that I started having catastrophic dreams, one after another. And since I was a therapist, I knew I had to take them seriously. And the dreams brought up a PTSD trauma from right at the end of the war. I was under German shelling that was so close to killing me that it's a miracle I survived. But that terrified me. I was taken over by terror.
Well, there it is. We've only got about a couple minutes left here. I just want to thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your experiences, your story with us. And we have a lot of veterans and a lot of advocates of veterans, people who love them, people who. And what advice could you give someone who's listening, who's tuning in, who might be on the edge, who might be hurting, and who loves their country, but their trauma has been hurting them, what would you recommend that they do? What would you advise?
It's a very good question. My simplest answer is you can fight effectively and be terrified.
Mm.
It's not a question of either or, but it's a question of both and.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I was often scared beyond belief, but I could function.
Mm-hmm.
And I was amazed that I could do that, but I could do it. So that, that's an encouragement to any of you out there who are facing close warfare and infantry combat.
Well, it is. I just want to thank you all who are tuning into the council today for being with us, being with Thayer and I, sharing remembrances of their sacrifices and the people who served in World War II, and all that Thayer has experienced and shared with us today. I want to thank KUHS TV Radio Denver. Thank you, Henry, and everybody here who makes this show possible. Without you, we couldn't do it. Thank you for all that you do behind the scenes to make us connect to the world. Tune in to KUHS TV Radio Denver. We are the stream, and we are touching hearts, reaching out to people all over this great country and all over the world. Thayer, before we close out the show today, I always ask, thank you, sir, so much for being here. My gosh, I wish we could talk for...
That's what you were looking for.
Absolutely, more than what I was looking for. It exceeded my expectations. I wish we could go on. And thank you for your service. Thank you for all that you represent. Sir, if you could give, I always ask my guests this before we close out the show. If you could give one piece of advice, one bit of wisdom from your life experience, what would it be?
You can fight and be afraid at the same time.
I think that's right in all life. We all have to confront our fears. Whether we are veterans, whether we're warriors, whether we're people just trying to navigate through our life day to day, it's facing the fears that we come up, and we can still have the will to fight, having the courage and the strength to endure and to face each and every day. And at the same time, we can be afraid. I mean, that's part of being human. Folks, we are about to close. Remember what a precious privilege it is to be alive when you wake up every morning, in spite of all that may be going on around you. In spite of all the craziness and challenges, remember the goodness that exists within everybody. Welcome them and see them as Americans. See them as human beings. See them as countrymen. And take a moment whenever you wake up in the morning to thank whoever you pray to. Thank them for giving you this precious privilege to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to engage, to love. Remember that as we go through these next few weeks. All right, folks, thank you so much for tuning in to the council. The council is adjourned. May you all be well. May you all be free of pain and suffering. May you all be whole. God bless everyone.
Thank you, Charlie.
We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you there. Goodbye, everyone. God bless.
Was that okay?
Yeah, you did good.
I almost called you in, but I could hear him.
Yeah, no,
I
it's
heard just enough. Now we're going to deal with veterans.
Oh my goodness.